Our Bible reading this week is in Acts, the 9th chapter, and I think that makes this one of the more memorable readings because
Right.
primarily it's about the conversion of Saul of Tarsus. But actually, if you wanted to get the big idea, I was trying to think of one big idea. That didn't work too well for this chapter because I guess the big idea is the conversion of Saul.
Right.
But that would leave off this little bit about Peter
Right.
we have at the end of the chapter. So two big ideas.
Well, it's rough chapter breaks again.
Paul, yeah, never met a chapter
That's
chapter
right.
break you like. So the big idea, Paul from verses 1 through 31, and then 32 through the end of the chapter, we have the story about Peter.
Right.
Well, actually, two stories about Peter. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about Saul. I think that for lots of Christians, this is a familiar story, but trying to see this with fresh eyes, maybe one way to structure this chapter is to look at three different people he interacts with.
Yeah.
Here. So we start at the beginning with Jesus, who
Right.
appears to him on the road. What a moment that must have been.
Oh, absolutely. And now puts him in the category of those who have seen the resurrected Christ, because whatever this was, it was a true appearance of Jesus to him.
Well, and so you have a paradigm shift for him.
Absolutely.
I would really like to be inside his mind for those 3 days.
Can you imagine? Well, and of course, that's the whole point of those scales on his eyes is everything he ever thought he knew, he hasn't seen. He hasn't seen clearly. He's been a blind man.
Which makes me think back to Jesus, because you've made the point over and over again to keep seeing the work of Jesus now
Yeah.
going through his followers. And so once again, we're dealing with the blindness.
Absolutely.
And two kinds of blindness going on with Saul.
Absolutely.
So then we have his interactions with Ananias, who's going to
Right.
come and get him started, so to speak. Teach him,
Nervously.
baptize him, and get him connected with the disciples.
Right.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? You know,
Well, that's the thing.
people always want to have a meeting with God, but how many times does that not usually work out well for the
No.
person who has the meeting?
No, and the thing that we'll see in this chapter, with even jumping a little bit ahead of you to the third with Barnabas here in a moment, is whether it's Ananias hesitant to meet Saul to baptize him, to the brethren not wanting to affiliate with him, Barnabas has to get involved. You also realize the power of Saul's reputation. All the Christians knew who this guy was, and that he was a dangerous man,
And he doesn't want to go.
and that he. That's right.
Doesn't want to go. And yet he
right.
goes and he gets him started. And then in this last segment, 26 through 31, we have him coming to Jerusalem as yes, you did get ahead of us and say, you had some trouble connecting there for obvious reasons. So we have a third character, Barnabas,
Right.
who intervenes and helps him connect with the disciples and for them to receive. And so interesting, his story revolves around these three different characters, Jesus,
Right.
and Ananias,
Right.
then Barnabas, who each have a role in helping him. In fact, I even thought there's some applications to think about that there about the way we all can play a different role in helping people. And
Yeah.
that's true here with Saul.
That's right. That's right.
So one of the things that seems to me Luke does is he sets up people for us.
Yeah, that's right.
We met Saul a little earlier,
Right.
when Stephen's killed. Now we have his conversion,
Right.
and there's going to be an interlude. We're going to go do some work with Peter, but Saul or Paul is coming.
That's right.
He's going to be really, really important as the story goes on.
That's right. Luke likes to tease us by, and the way the chapter breaks sit right now, we want to highlight Paul, but Paul is almost a parenthesis. His conversion is almost a parenthesis. The larger storyline is the persecution against the Jerusalem church has led to, which Saul was involved in, has led to this scattering. And ironically, Saul is chasing those who have been scattered. He's on his way up to Antioch when he's converted. But now we're back to the scattering. It's back to primarily Peter. It's going to follow. The rest of the chapter follows Peter's story as Peter leaves Jerusalem and he heads down towards the coastal plain. He'll go to Lydda. He'll go to Joppa. And next week in chapter 10, he winds up in Caesarea.
So you just need to get ahead, don't you?
Always
Always looking at what's coming. Let's talk about that, because that's the next segment. We go back to Peter, and he will be center stage not just for the rest of 9, but 10 and 11.
That's right.
He's going to be a critical character.
And ironically, this will be just about the end of Peter's story in Acts as well, because then we're going to come back around to the rise of Paul. And so I think what we're seeing here is, again, back to the basic outline of the book in Acts 1 and verse 8, where you have first in Jerusalem, then the Samaria and Judea, and then the othermost parts of the earth. We've seen the gospel now, obviously in Jerusalem, now this to Judea. Philip and the eunuch and all of that was in that region. Now we've kind of go to Samaria. We're going out the coastal plain and up the coast there, following Peter. But then it's going to be Paul to the uttermost ends of the earth, which is the rest of Acts. But we're just about there, but not yet.
Not yet. By the way, before we're done, we should deal with what we have here in 9 about Peter. We have two
Miracles,
miracles.
Christ-like miracles.
Well, see, that's what I was about to say. They ring familiar.
Right.
And so you have those connecting threads back to
Right.
the Jesus story with someone who was paralyzed. And then
Who's told to take up his bed.
and then we have someone who dies.
Right.
And is raised from the dead.
In a scene in which nobody else is allowed in. In the Gospels, it was Jairus' daughter, Luke chapter 8. Here, it's a grown woman. It's Tabitha or Dorcas, but the echoes are strong, and that's the point. And what's also important is Jesus does it in his own authority. That first healing, Peter says, Aeneas, Jesus Christ heals you. And so again, they recognize that the work that they're doing is not on their own. It's a continuation of Jesus's work. And so the healing of a paralytic and raising a woman literally from her deathbed. Very Jesus-like, but very clear that the apostles are doing it in continuity with the power of Jesus.
And a sign that we are continuing the story.
That's right.
What started with Jesus is now continuing through his apostles and his disciples working among these early Christians. So that's Acts chapter 9. Spend some time reading through that this week. We hope it'll be a blessing to you.